At the age of 15, I was friends with a girl named Lily. Lily lived in my neighborhood, about half a mile from my parents' house. Since her place was on the way home, we usually walked back together from school. It was the last week of October and unusually cold. It felt like winter. The neighborhood trees were shedding, and I found myself wading through a sea of leaves as we walked up our driveway. A row of smiling jack-o'-lanterns greeted us from the front porch, and the yard was dotted with fake gravestones. On this particular afternoon, the rest of her family was out doing something. There were no cars in the driveway, and the house looked empty. Lily's dad was a dentist, and her mom was an attorney, so their house was gigantic. It was a 3-story home with a big basement, painted pale gray with a black trim. The roof was tall and steep, and the windows had old-fashioned wood shutters. It must have been built 100 years ago, and it clearly had character. The place was kept in good shape, but still undeniably old. We headed around the side of her house to the back door. In the backyard, 3 or 4 cats were draped lazily over various pieces of patio furniture. There were even more inside. A pair of piercing yellow eyes locked onto me from inside the kitchen window as another jet black cat stood stationary on the windowsill above the sink. Her mom was something of a crazy cat lady. Lily pulled a key out of her backpack and unlocked the door. We headed up to her room to play around on her Super Nintendo. After about an hour, we heard music coming from downstairs. This wouldn't have been that strange, except that we were the only ones in the house. We both thought someone had gotten home, so we checked the driveway. But there were no cars. We listened quietly for a minute or so as the music continued. It sounded like classical music from what we could hear. Finally, we decided that it was in our best interest to investigate. When we got to the main floor, it became evident that it was piano music. The source was not immediately apparent. I remembered that Lily's dad had a nice stereo system, so at the moment I figured that was where the music was coming from. When I looked over at Lily, however, I could see the look of horror on her face as she stared towards the kitchen. "What is it?" I asked her. "We have a piano in the basement," she said weakly. "My grandmother's." The words struck my heart like a flash of lightning. Lily continued. "She used to live here with us until last winter. But the piano, none of us even know how to play it. It's covered in a sheet." We both slowly walked to the kitchen, where the door to the basement was located. The old wooden door, painted a dull beige, was ajar. We stared down the steps, which extended into the blackness of the basement. Exquisite piano music poured loudly from the darkness. There was no doubt about it. Someone was in the basement, playing the piano. I could hear the resonance of the sustain in the wood, the foot pedals thumping between measures, the gentle clack of the keys. Whoever it was, they were playing beautifully. We both stood at the door for what seemed like an eternity, listening to the sad piano music droning up from the basement. We nervously whispered back and forth what to do next. Neither of us really wanted to go and see who was down there playing. After what seemed like hours had passed, I had finally gathered the courage to shout down the stairs. The only thing that jumped into my head was, "Who's down there?" The music stopped abruptly. Lily and I just stood there in the kitchen, not breathing, staring at each other's faces. The silence echoed in my ears. Lily took a timid step forward and flicked on the light switch located near the top of the steps. After a couple metallic clicking noises and a buzz, the lights flickered on, just out of view, at the bottom of the steps. We went down into the basement together, and as you might imagine, the room was empty, save for a gaunt wooden piano, covered in a white sheet. We investigated the room together. Lily checked one side of the room, near the piano. There was a rusted washer-dryer combo off to the side, and next to that, a deep ceramic sink with a long crack in the basin. No evidence of anyone or anything nearby. I checked the back end of the basement, where there was a stack of old Time magazines, bound tightly in twine. Then I noticed the basement door that led to the backyard. The door was slightly open, just enough for me to see through the gap outside. I opened it up to the concrete stairway with an iron banister, which led up to the easement behind the house. Just then, a gust of wind picked up a torrent of leaves, sending them skidding down the alley nearby. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked wildly. There was nobody there.